Welcome back, friends. If you haven't been here before, I am Susan Clifton and I'm a South Florida artist. And today we are going to do a collage using mostly neutral papers, a lot of black and white, and a little pop of color. Quick peek. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to get started with making some jelly prints with some deli paper, and I'm using Alizarin Crimson Hue. This is going to be my pop of color on a very sort of neutral colored collage. And I'm just starting with just some random shapes, and I want it to sort of be more organic. You'll see from the other papers that I'm selecting for the collage that this particular or these particular stencils will probably work best. And I'm doing both the pick up through the stencil and then the ghost print because I'm not really sure which I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm taking some watercolor paper and I sketched out like a 7 by 7 inch area, and I'm taping it off, and I'm going to do some white gesso. So this step is kind of important. You really should gesso the watercolor paper or any other kind of paper that you're using. It definitely gives you the kind of surface that you need to work in. And then of course wait for it to fully dry. As you'll see, it's starting to buckle up, but it dries a little flatter than that. Okay, so here's my plan. I have all these black and white papers, and I have my catalyst wedge and my scissors and my gel medium, and I even pulled out a X-Acto knife at one point. But that little sketch that you see right there is my rough plan, and it might change, but that's kind of the plan. And this grungy paper is the only really one that has any color on it right now, but it is kind of very neutral with a little bit of some greens and green gold that were like scabs that came off a plate. That happened to be like a paper that I was just using to clean the plate. So you should always keep all of those papers because you never know when you're going to need them. So you'll notice I'm using the grid that's on my table to actually make my lines straight. So it's very convenient to have that. I don't have to pull out a T-square or anything. I just line up the lines, and I'm roughly sketching my little thumbnail sketch onto my paper, and it might change. So sorry, my screen is shaking. Every once in a while I hit the camera. Anyway, this was one of my favorite papers. I love those two stencils, and I just happened to have that on one sheet of paper because as you know, if you watch my channel, I use two different stencils sometimes on the plate. This other sheet was just, I took a big brush and some black paint and I painted on some rice paper. So I'm using various designs, and notice, and here's my alizarin crimson on my deli paper. And I've also found these sheets that are, like I said, cleaning my plate sheets. But what I want to mention is sometimes you want your designs to have a variation in size. So you want like large, like those brush strokes were like large brush strokes, and then I had a small delicate pattern, and then I have a medium-sized pattern. So we want to have different types of interesting shapes. So I'm using here like two right angles to sort of see where I might want to pull out just a little bit of a design from within the paper. So I'm thinking now that maybe I need like a long skinny shape. So maybe that shape over there on the side, and see how you can sort of see it in advance. You can plan out your crops. And that piece is definitely going to go across the top. That has always been the plan. And I definitely want to use that. I love that bright green gold, so I want to use that somewhere as well. But I keep changing my mind. So, of course, we all do this. We cut things and we say, okay, this for sure is going to go here, and then we change our mind. I also want some strips. And so sometimes I look at a sheet, even though the overall design is nice, I might just want a strip of it. And so now I'm going to start at least cutting some shapes, at least for the top. I want to get that top panel in. And probably in that right-hand corner, top corner, I'm going to do something else. Maybe lay something on top of it. And usually I don't take the gel medium as my glue. I don't take that out until I'm pretty sure that a piece is going to go, because once it's down, it's down. Especially since we're using paper. You know, we're putting paper on paper. If we tried to lift it, it would just be a mess. And I always take my catalyst wedge and I sort of burnish it down. So one of the reasons why I'm using these more neutral colors is because I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone. I've always been a very colorful artist. I always like to work in possibly too many colors for some people to be comfortable with. And I'm trying to just do something a little bit different these days, just because you never know what it's going to lead to when I experiment. So we'll see how this comes out. But I am definitely a big lover of the black and white contrast. Always love a black and white design. So what I'm doing is just adding very little additional color, as I normally would. All these, teals and oranges. I just love that. And, we're just doing something a little bit different today, that's all. I think it's important for us to always still work in our style, but then, do something a little bit different every once in a while. So I'm cutting after I lay it down, so I get it exact, but like quickly while it's still wet. I love that after it was cropped. It was just perfect. So those like random sheets that you make, I mean, they don't look like much at the time that you make them, but you do a nice crop like this and it becomes something else. So just, pull out the brushes and the paint and just do it. You'd be surprised where you might use it in the future. And one of the reasons why I chose that Alizarin crimson was because of this piece of paper. It had that tiny little bit of that color in that scab. And it's, you can't really tell, but it's also in that top piece, just really very minimally. So I thought that it would make a nice accent over the top. So what we're going to do is finish this part of it, and then we're going to take those deli papers and we're going to overlay it. The deli paper is supposed to sort of almost disappear when you paste it down. But I've never had deli paper before. This was my first time. I definitely liked printing with it. I think it would be great pickup paper because it seems to take all of the paint off the plate. It just really does a great job of doing that. So maybe just have it around, even if it's just for, you know, cleaning your plate. Okay, so now I'm deciding whether I want to stay with those positions, but I also want to use a little bit more of this circle paper that I have. And I'm looking again to make another crop. So I'm thinking this top piece, but then I changed my mind because that bottom section right there really has a lot of movement to it. So I like that. So I'm just nicking the corner a little bit so I know where to do my initial cut. So again, I'm changing my mind. I needed that little bit of color to come slicing through the black and whites. And I also want a little bit of like a sort of a stripe pattern. So I'm going to just pull from here. It's striped, but it's not striped. Okay, so I think this is where I've decided that I'm going to put this in the corner. I kept playing with it in that corner, and yeah, that's where it belongs. Because I want to get that in there before I start bringing in my vertical pieces. So I've noticed some other artists, they plan their entire collage ahead of time. They cut everything out, they lay it out, they maybe take a picture of it with their phone, and then they glue it all at once. But the few times that I've tried that, it really didn't work for me. So I make decisions along the way, and then I glue it down. Maybe it also helps with a little bit with making decisions and making them be permanent decisions, because if I planned it ahead of time and then as I'm in the gluing process, I'm changing my mind again, not such a good idea. So I like it better this way because I'm forced to make quicker decisions and I'm not laboring over it. So when you're cutting on top of watercolor paper, definitely use a very light pressure, or it'll cut through your paper. Okay, so I'm still deciding where that piece is going to go. I'm even looking to see if there's other pieces that I might want to use instead. So I decided I wanted something that had a lot more black in it, but I just didn't want to have a solid black. So this, I'm using just a strip of where there's some dry brush, and so I'll have a little bit of solid, but then I'll also have some of that dry brush area, and that will be my vertical black, but without being a solid, boring black piece, if that makes any sense. So I just want to square this piece up a little bit because I didn't cut it too carefully at first. So I'm still changing I'm still changing my idea of what should be on the top, what should be on the bottom, what should be in the middle. I'm having trouble making up my mind, but then I remembered this piece that had the green gold. And so I just made a little nick with my knife just to know where to cut approximately. And I'm starting to glue down. So I'm making some decisions. When you're working in collage, it's the decision making that is the hardest part, I mean, you know which papers you want to use, you know a lot of things, but then as you're starting to put it all together, you keep over questioning it. Everybody does this. So if you're beating yourself up about it, don't. We all do it. So this is turning out to be my favorite part, this bottom piece here. I just love the way I cropped this. So using that right angle trick is, it's not really a trick, but it's definitely a useful tool when you're trying to figure out how to crop a piece of paper. Now see, that was rice paper, so that's why it's kind of delicate and it was tearing at the bottom. Okay, so all of my papers are in place. So now we have to make some decisions about where we're going to overlay some of these patterns. Okay, so in my mind I kind of have an idea, but again, it could change. Yeah, I decided to go with something bolder over there, I think. So in this case, I wanted to sort of cut around some of these shapes, have them dip into the black and white area, but start in that yellowy area. So here I am gluing down that first piece in the upper left, and I've decided to lay some gel medium on top of it as well. It's not dissolving into the background as much as I thought it would, which is a little bit disappointing. Sometimes tissue paper will do that a little bit better, I think. Maybe it's the type of deli paper I bought. If anybody knows, please leave me a message in the comments below. I would love to know which deli paper I should buy. So I ended up not using any of those like little tiny pieces, but you just never know what you're going to like when you start doing this. So, make as many papers as you think you might need. Okay, so I decided to take off my frog tape. This is when you can really see if you like your composition or not. Some of my paper tore there, so I decided to put some gel medium on top of it. So I should have gessoed the entire piece of paper and then laid my tape down, because my tape, although it's great for not pulling up paint, it pulled up the paper. So then I remembered that upper corner that I really wanted to add piece to. Almost forgot all about that. I was supposed to do this before I pulled off the tape. So I had even cleaned up my brushes and everything, so I had to get a different brush out, add a little bit more gel medium, but it all works. And I just trim off the top. And we're done. So I'm going to let this dry and see if that deli paper blends a little bit better than it is. I'm still not happy with that. Okay, so now it's all dry. It's still, I can see it. I can see it more than when I use tissue paper, so I'm not happy with that. But, we live and learn. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed looking over my shoulder and watching me create this piece. Don't forget, create, inspire, and share, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.